You know, in 2013, I went to a polling booth, knowing very well what Raila Odinga has done for this country. Yeah. And I decided to cast a vote for the presidency, not for Raila, but for Martha Wangari Karua. Now, the reason why I did that is because I believed at the time, I still believe, that this great Kenyan woman who has stood firm, who has always been consistent in everything she does for a better Kenya, deserved to be President of the Republic of Kenya in 2013. In my opinion then, she was the only one who would ensure that our new constitution then, the 2010 constitution, would be followed to the letter. Because I knew if we followed our 2010 constitution to the letter, including chapter 6, which you're abusing all the time, the qualities required of a Kenyan to vie for any leadership position, and many others in the constitution, in my opinion, we did not need a president with new ideas then. All we needed was a president to ensure that our 2010 constitution was deeply entrenched in the nation called Kenya. Because if that did happen, then Kenya would change. We would not need an individual to change the country. Indeed, I still hold those same views. Now you make a judgment today whether I was right then or I was wrong. And please tell me in the comments area. Because in my opinion, Martha Karua is a president in waiting. She would make an extraordinary President of the Republic of Kenya. But on my show today, I focus on something which many Kenyans have ignored. Even supporters of Azimio do not think that the fact that Martha Karua has always insisted on not accepting William Ruto as her president, and by the way, she's a lawyer by training, so she knows when she's breaking the law and when she's not, and she's telling us she's well within her rights. Well, on my show today, I want to prove to you that what she's saying is going to have consequences. Now, this is a show you don't want to miss. This is a show that you want to stay with to the very end, because I tell a super fascinating Kenyan story, something that has happened in Kenya before, to prove to you that there are consequences. Even when a court passes judgment, there are consequences, especially if the court of public opinion does not agree with that judgment, especially if the court of public opinion has a different opinion. Karibu sana to my show. Now, a quick reminder, my special offer on our weekly intelligence briefings is coming to an end shortly. Please rush. You can see details on your screen. Many of you guys forced me to extend it, so please don't put me in that position where words that I swallowed going against what I said is all for nothing. Just take that action immediately. All details on your screen, and get all the back editions of my sensitive information weekly intelligence briefings, and I'm sure you will find it super fascinating. Well, one thing I can say about today's show is that although we are talking about legal matters and the court of public opinion, I can bet you one thing: it is not going to be a boring show. In fact, the very opposite. It is a movie. That one I assure you. And please tell me in the comments area when you get to the end whether I was just talking hot air or I was telling the truth. Okay? I'll really appreciate that. Also, while you're at it, please give this video a like if you're already enjoying it. That will be a great help to me. And please subscribe if you're not yet a subscriber, because I believe a lot of the content you get here is very, very difficult to get anywhere else. Right! A very warm welcome and twende kazi. As a mere deputy presidential candidate, Martha Karua, to this day, does not recognize President William Ruto as the President of Kenya or as her president. She has repeated this many times. On a BBC interview, she said the same thing. On a recent interview with a local radio station, she repeated precisely the same thing. And many Kenyans believe that this is completely harmless. It is of no consequence. However, I want to prove to you that that is not the case. Not at all. Yeah. And I even want to give you concrete evidence from the history of our country to prove that actually that is a very big deal. Now, before we go any further, let us take a minute to listen to exactly what Martha Karua said. Indeed, what Martha Karua has been consistently saying, so that nobody tells us that we're misquoting her or misrepresenting her. Just listen in.
The law recognizes him, I don't. I have a choice. As the president, courtesy of the law, I do not have to overpraise that position. I differed. I said I respect what the court verdict, but totally disagree with it. I still stand here to say that the results were doctored. Okay? And that's a personal position. You cannot stop my brain from working. You cannot force me to believe. So I'm talking about my belief. What I believe in is not subject to the law. It is subject to my conscience. But giving way to the law is obeying the law, isn't it? Okay. So the court spoke, we gave way, but we are still searching for the truth. I have to keep on saying, I do not believe he won. And the justice given in court may not represent the truth. So you cannot force me to believe. I'll give way. If it's land that I'm told to return to you, I will. Okay? Because the court has said so. But I'll continue saying, watu wamenirusha. Just to say that there is need for us to preserve our constitution. Let us not accept the move to cower people, to bend towards one formation. Unity in diversity. And especially this message is to those elected in the county assemblies and in parliament. Okay. Namana azimio tukae ngangari.
There you have it. No arguments. Very clear language. Yeah. Very clear. Cannot be interpreted in a different way. Okay? Now, throughout history, it is a recognized fact that you can never afford to ignore the court of public opinion. Throughout history, we have seen that a court of law can pass a judgment. And if this judgment is not acceptable to the vast majority in the court of public opinion, you will never, ever escape consequences. And in the same way, politicians, very powerful politicians, even the leaders of a country, can portray a certain narrative, can have a certain opinion. But if the opinion, if their narrative is not acceptable in the court of public opinion, there will be consequences. And I think we have to agree that what Martha Karua is portraying here, what she's saying, is the same opinion of a vast majority of Kenyans, Azimio supporters. And that is why what she's saying, is not of no consequence. No, it is going to have consequences. But first, let us start with the Supreme Court judgment, which made all this possible, which made the situation in Kenya today, as we are facing it, possible. In other words, we are starting by saying that a decision by a court of law that is accepted but questioned by a vast majority in the court of public opinion will not fail to have consequences, no matter how long it takes. Our Supreme Court passed a verdict to accept the election of President Ruto. And the vast majority in the court of public opinion in Kenya went into mourning. Tears. Some people are not even eating. What consequences will this have? History tells us there must be consequences. Now in Kenya today, it is not politically correct to go back to history to try and learn some lessons. And many Kenyans hate history. However, please allow me a few minutes to give you a super fascinating tale that unfolded in our dear motherland. In the year 1980. Very fascinating case. And it had consequences. And even on the High Court judge, Mzungu, who passed a verdict that left Kenyans in pain. Okay, let's get on with it. And let's start with how the crime that ended up in court happened. On the night of 3rd August 1980, in Mombasa, at the Florida nightclub, that's on Mama Ngina Drive. Many of us know exactly where that is. A Kenyan woman by the name of Monica Njeri met for the first time an American soldier, somebody in the Navy, a man called Frank Sandstrom. Sandstrom at the time was only 19 years old. And the two hit it off immediately. Now, of course, Monica was a lady of the night. And so they agreed to go back to her place, somewhere in Ganjoni. You all know where that is. It's right bang in the middle of Mombasa Island. Actually, to retire there for the night. Haikukuwa shot moja, ilikuwa the whole night. Okay? And they even agreed on a fee of Kenya shillings 300, which was a lot of money at the time. Let me just prove it to you, it was a lot of money. At the time in the magical 80s, the exchange rate of Kenya shillings to the US dollar was, wait for this one, 7 Kenya shillings. In other words, 7 Kenya shillings gave you 1 US dollar. And so in dollar terms, what was agreed on was $42. And so Frank Sandstrom and Monica Njeri retired for the night. And initially everything was okay, no problem. Na baada ya shot ya kwanza, Monica Njeri fell asleep. She had probably had too much to drink from Bwana Sandstrom's generosity. Yeah, and maybe she was also tired. But Bwana Sandstrom alikuwa anataka round 2. But Monica said, no, hapana. And Bwana Sandstrom got very angry. Yeah. Perhaps it's relevant to note that back at the Florida nightclub, the couple did not just have beers. Walivuta bangi pia. Nakwambia, Mombasa raha. Just something else. And so Bwana Sandstrom decided that he should get a refund. And he went for Monica's purse and tried to remove the money he had given her. And a fight ensued. Yeah, a very violent one. And at the end of it, Monica left us. And Bwana Sandstrom was arrested. And he faced trial. And this was an open and shut case. Watertight evidence. But when the judge came to pronounce his verdict, he ruled it manslaughter. And he asked Bwana Sandstrom to deposit a mere Kenya shillings 500 with the court as a bond for 2 years of good behavior. And the man walked away, got onto his ship, and returned to his home in the United States of America. Kenyans were livid. But that was the law. The High Court of Kenya had pronounced itself. End of story. Just the way the Supreme Court pronounced itself the other day. Utadu, you have to accept and move on. End of story. Huh? It didn't happen like that. Not at all. That's not the way things work. The laws of virtually every country in the world demand that a case is heard in public. And of course that includes Kenya. And there's a good reason for that. I know many of us don't even know that that is part of the law. The case must be heard in public. Why? Because justice must be done, and justice must be seen to be done. And when justice is not seen to be done, you can be sure there'll be consequences. Yeah. Now in those days, there was a deliberate policy by the Attorney General for many years, Charles Mugani Njonjo, to keep Africans, local Kenyans, from climbing too high up the ranks in the judiciary. And so as a result, at the High Court at that time, out of the 19 High Court judges, 14 14 were Mzungus, most of them expatriates, hired on contract, including the judge in the Monica Njeri case, L.G.E. Harris, who was 74 years at the time. Now you may be very outraged by the fact that Kenya at the time, almost 2 decades after independence, had a vast majority of judges, Mzungus, expatriates. However, looking at the judiciary today and the stories we hear, in my opinion, Charles Njonjo had a very good reason for insisting that judges should be Mzungus and not local chaps who could be corrupted. Indeed, I dare say the late Charles Njonjo is today being vindicated for this crazy decision he took in the 70s, 60s and 70s and 80s. So what happened as a result? What were the consequences? There was hue and cry everywhere in Kenya. Kenyans were saying, no, no, how? And the matter came up in Parliament. And the Attorney General at the time, Abana James Karugu, who had just taken over from Njonjo, had to go before the legislators to make a statement on this matter. And he was cheered wildly when he said that in his opinion, justice was not done in this case. Parliament cheered. Kenyans cheered. Yes, that's our feeling, Kenyans were saying. But then he added, legally, his hands were tied. There was absolutely nothing he could do about it. Now, in my opinion, I disagree. They would have filed a civil case, sued for a fortune, at least to help take care of the young daughters the late Monica Njeri had left. Yeah, one 11 years and another one 4 years only at the time in 1980. And I wonder where Jane Wanjiku and Teresia Wangeshi are today. I'm wondering whether they're listening into this. Yeah. Today, they would be in their 40s and 50s. Yeah, they're old women. Consequence number one from this saga. Judge L.G.E. Harris lost his job. Usicheze na court of public opinion. Don't take it lightly. Consequence number two. White contract judges in the Kenyan High Court and Court of Appeal were phased out. Kwisha maneno. And local indigenous Kenyan judges took over. Yeah. Now Monica Njeri was just a poor Kenyan girl. She was not the daughter of an important Kenyan. She was not the daughter of an influential rich Kenyan. No. But still, this incident had dire consequences for a lot of very important people in Kenya. The consequences of the court of public opinion, which should make all Supreme Court judges go back and read the history books kidogo, yeah, to learn one or two things that may touch on their future. Now, I'm sure you agree with me after listening to this very interesting story. Ni kama movie, ni kama video. Yeah? I'm sure you now agree with me that the words of Martha Karua, this thing she's insisting on, cannot just be brushed aside as being of no consequence. History tells us different. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.